Open the business meeting for Ellis County Commissioners. We'll call it to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bobby, if you'd like to call roll.
Vice Chair Nathan Liker. Here.
Commissioner Michael Burgess.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Any change to the order of business, Mike?
Nope.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look at the prior minutes?
I have. I'm good. I'll move
Good
to
to me.
approve the minutes.
Okay. Minutes are good. Next, consent agenda.
I'll move to approve consent agenda A through G.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any issues from people not on the public, or not present, not on the order of business? Seeing none, we'll move on. Okay, introduction of new employees. Jennifer?
Good morning, Jennifer Taylor, Ellis County HR Coordinator. And this morning I have Christy Luders here with me. She is new to the Treasury Department as a motor vehicle tax collection clerk. And then we also have two that were unable to be here today from Public Works. I have Steve Durheim, he's a truck driver 2, and Josh Lemon, he's a truck driver 1. So we are excited to have those new staff over the last month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Jennifer, you can stay, I
I'll
guess.
stay. Okay, Jennifer Taylor, HR Coordinator. As you guys know, recruitment over the last couple years has been challenging. Not only finding qualified applicants, but finding them in the area that are willing to work. And so what we did for our Public Works Department is we looked at some of the challenges, because they have been one department that has had openings and numerous openings over the extended time frame, a year plus. And so what they did was we looked at 2 different job descriptions, the Weed Control Tech 1 and the Equipment Operator, and the requested changes on there will help open up the recruitment applicant pool. That way we can have a larger selection and have more potential applicants. That way we can fill these positions, hopefully in a more timely manner, that will help us fill the position, but it will also have a positive impact on our current employees, because it has the potential of not working so short-staffed. All of the requested changes that are listed there will not reduce the quality of the work or the quantity of work that's being required for the department. So there's not really any negatives to this. It's just opening up, and it also allows these positions to kind of accurately portray what their true need is.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions on any of the changes or any of the positions?
I don't.
I really don't, so.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yes. Yep. All right.
I'll move to approve edits to the job descriptions as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Yep, thank
Thank
you. Next, we have the Big Brothers and Big Sisters update. Hello.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jenny Bates, the Executive Director here for Big Brothers Big Sisters in Ellis County, and I'm excited to be here this morning to be able to give you an update on what's been going on with our program so far this year, since we have received county funding, that we truly appreciate the support to help us continue what we're doing. First, I want to let you know that in 2022, we served 212 children in Ellis County, which is an increase from 199 in 2021. And then actually that number has been increasing every year since 2019, which unfortunately shows the need of our services for our community and the kids in our community, but also highlights the volunteers that and people in our community who are willing to volunteer and walk alongside these kids who need this extra help. So far this year in 2023, we have matched 12 children who've been waiting for their big, so that's always an exciting time in our office. We currently have 158 matches in Ellis County, which means 158 children are receiving services. That's their volunteers meeting with them on a monthly basis, weekly basis, however that looks for each child, which is an awesome thing going on. That also means we have 158 volunteers in our communities here in Ellis County. And actually that number exceeds that because over 20 of them are couples and families. So that child gets to be involved with that entire family that they're matched with. We are serving children in all communities in Ellis County and have children in all of the school districts in Ellis County as well. One thing that's always really exciting as well as making a new match is celebrating match anniversaries. So when a match is made, they have that's a special match date that they get to celebrate each year. And so far in 23, we had 11 matches celebrate their 1-year anniversary. We had 6 matches celebrating 2 years, 2 matches celebrating 3 years, 2 other matches celebrating 4 years together, and then we had 1 match in February who got to celebrate being together for 7 years. So lots of good stuff, lots of positive impacts going on. We have 4 program staff in our office who each have a caseload, and so each match, all those 158 matches right now, are working individually with each match and making sure it's going well for both the little and the child, that it's impacting the child in the way it needs to be. Every child comes to us with a specific situation going on. It looks different for everyone, and we want to make sure that this is the best fit match for that child. Because we are in regular contact with all of our matches, there's lots of amazing things we get to hear that are going on. Some of the things we've heard so far is a little has been bowling for the first time ever, been to the bowling alley. Some of those things we take for granted that we don't always think about others not having that opportunity. We have had a little attend a Fort Hays athletic event for the first time, being on campus and experiencing that. A little who his mom shared that her son's been able to reduce the number of times seeing his therapist since having his little brother, that relationship is helping him in those different ways that he was needing. Another mom who shared that her child isn't as angry at home anymore and telling his family that he loves them, which wasn't happening before. A little sister helped, or a big sister helped her little sister how to tie her shoes. We have one little brother whose goal with his big brother is to grow fruits and vegetables because when he grows up, he wants to be a biochemist. And it worked out pretty well because the big brother we matched him with, actually it's a couple match, but the big brother is an agronomist. So they should be able to make that happen together. Should be fun to watch that relationship grow. And just our bigs, I mean, when you think about life and things going on and the things that our kids are struggling with, our bigs are there helping these kids through that. They're that one consistent person that's there for that child, no matter what. If it's a good decision that they're making, we're celebrating that. And if it's maybe something that wasn't so good, their big is there to help encourage them and help them make better choices, hopefully, the next time in those situations. Something else new and exciting that's been going on, we have a new life skills guide that's been created within Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is really cool. This was developed last year. The Life Skills Guide is providing our bigs with activity ideas and conversation starters, helping them give some direction and really just dig a little deeper with their littles to help them with their success in life. Each quarter, they're introduced to a new topic. We started this at the end of last year with quarter 4, and our emphasis was on reading. And so we were able to provide a age-appropriate book list for each of our matches. And then also we created a scavenger hunt for to be done at the Hayes Public Library, to get our matches into the library and look for different materials and see different departments and just explore. And it was the first time for some of our littles to be able to go to the public library, so it's exciting to get them involved in that way. Just this last quarter, our focus was on healthy habits and goals, and so helping make some good choices with eating and good things like that. And what we're hoping to do as an agency to support this even more is to partner with different agencies and organizations in the community to offer different activities that matches can come to. So we partnered with the K-State Extension Office, and Monique put together this great presentation about eating the rainbow colors. It was a lot of fruits and vegetables, but making it fun. They have a blender bike. So they were able to choose fruits and vegetables to put in together. The littles get on the bike and make a smoothie out of their fruits and vegetables. Some turned out good, some not so much, but they had a lot of fun doing that. And also, we partnered with Kansas Works to do a career exploration workshop. This was more geared for middle school and high school littles, for them to start thinking about what they want to do when they grow up, and even filling out those applications for those first-time high school jobs, what's appropriate to fill in the blanks for skills and things like that. So lots of good things. This quarter is going to be about self-care, starting good routines, good hygiene routines, just lots of good things to help our bigs, give them a focus, and things that our littles need support in on those daily, things that are going on. We as an organization as well, in addition to that, try to always offer activities for our matches to be able to come together, to get to know each other, and provide a activity for a meeting for their littles. So this year we had a Fort Hays basketball game. We partnered with athletic department. The bigs and littles were able to get in free, and Precision Valley sponsored concession vouchers for all of our matches who were there, for them to be able to enjoy the evening. And that was where that little was able to experience that basketball game for the first time. Tonight, we're supposed to have a Easter egg hunt with Schaefer and Associates. It's something that they've done for many years, that they put all this together and invite all of our bigs and littles and families to come together to do that. Hopefully it's not too windy for it. But yes, all of this, everything that we're doing is just to be able to best support these bigs and with their matches, to best support the children, to make these connections in the community, and help the children feel connected and think about their futures and provide, hopefully have successes in what they're doing. So, any questions from anyone?
Are you always looking for volunteers?
We are. We do. We have a waiting list. Right now, there's about 30 kids who are waiting. That number changes almost every day with the matches we're making to new families who are calling in to enroll their children. That waiting list is mostly little brothers, so we need male volunteers always, and or the couples and families. When we have that come to us, we can match them either with a little brother or a little sister. So yes, we always need volunteers, unfortunately. I always say, I wish if we didn't need our jobs, that would be great. But it's definitely a need. Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No
Thank you.
questions. It's a fantastic program. I was supportive of it. On Facebook, whenever you post the matches, I make sure that's one post I make sure I read through
Yeah.
the whole thing. That's always a nice thing to see. So
Yes, it's a good
Good
thing
work.
to be celebrated. Thank you, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you for your
Okay.
work.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll have accounts payable purchase card program renewal. A lot of P's in that one.
Good morning, Commissioners. Darren Myers, County Administrator. Invite Shane up here from Commerce Bank, and he has been working with our County Clerk, Bobby Dreiling, and our County Treasurer, Vern Reuter, in regards to updating a current purchasing card program that we have in place, as well as expanding that onto a new voucher process for revenue shares coming back to the county. And I won't steal Shane's thunder or misrepresent anything because it's not necessarily a complicated program, but Shane put together a program and or a PowerPoint that he'll kind of go over, and then I guess, like I say, Bobby, Vern, or I can provide any perspective or ideas. Bobby's glaring at me because I volunteered to speak, but I'll turn it over to Shane.
Good morning, everybody. Shane Smith, Market President for Commerce Bank here in Hayes. I have a couple handouts here that all. You can also follow along from the presentation up on the board here. First off, just wanted to provide a little context about the presentation. We had reached out last fall to the treasurer with the intention of completing a payment cycle review. Really what this does is it's a free review, but we work with organizations and businesses to review their payment processes and look for inefficiencies and or better methods to make payments and collect payments. The other aspect of that is we also look for fraud mitigation efforts to make sure that the county and any other organization has an eye towards fraud prevention. Through that process, we examined the accounts payable side of the payment spectrum and ran a spend analysis on the county payments that are sent to suppliers. That analysis showed us that there's a sizable opportunity for Ellis County to be more efficient in making payments, earn some revenue share, and continue to minimize fraud. This includes, kind of our recommendation out of this includes continuing to use the existing purchasing card program, as well as expand the usage, which has been a little bit minimal to date on the accounts payable solution. Both of these programs have been in place about 10 years, as Greg's son was the administrator at the time that helped put that program in place. As far as the handouts, if you want to turn to page 2, the two sides of the program that's part of the contract that's in front of you guys. There's obviously the purchasing card program, which I think everybody's probably familiar with. You've got an actual physical card with your department or your team members for travel, supplies, online purchases, etc. The other part of the program that many aren't as familiar with is actually the AP side. And so I'd like to take just a little bit of time to describe how that works, what that process looks like, and what that means to staff in the county. As you can see, the process is fairly simple. It's just instructing Commerce to make payments through sending us a file of what payments to send for us to send out. The suppliers receive remittance and notification from us that that payment is available to take. The supplier connects with us and takes that payment either by credit card or private network payment. And then Commerce Bank on the backside generates a reconciliation report and provides that back to the county for reconciliation purposes. That's in a nutshell how it works. So it's not an intensive or very challenging process to work with. Page 3 walks through kind of how we enroll your suppliers. Supplier relationships are very important for any organization, making sure that when a new program is offered, that's rolled out effectively. We have enrollers that are dedicated to nothing more than enrolling suppliers in our program. We have a significant amount of tenure on this team, and they use our internal systems to manage those suppliers over time. Those suppliers often will see across organizations the same suppliers. And once they accept from one of the programs, they're often inclined to accept from any other organization that wants to use the program. We do have a substantial list in our database, but there's over 2,000 suppliers that actually auto-accept the program. So they absolutely want to receive the payment that way. It helps them receive their payment faster. There's no waiting on the payment in the mail. They are able to use those funds faster, and they're assured that there's no issues with the paper payment, that item being returned or anything like that. Our enrollers do record all of the interactions with those suppliers for quality purposes, and we promote a payment option of card. First, it would be card, and then if it's not card, they would resort back to existing check options. We'll actually make those calls on any vendor that the county spends more than $5,000 with. Any additional vendors beyond that, we can continue to work with, but those are the initial ones called up front. Those are also the ones where the county get the biggest bang for their buck by sending the payments through this process. Ongoing enrollment efforts, once the program's up and running, we'll continue to work with the county and the administrative team for any suppliers that come along, any new suppliers that you have, any old suppliers that drop off, to make sure that we can keep them enrolled in the program or adjust along the way with any adjustments in your supplier network. We also have contact methods available through phone and email, where those suppliers can contact us with any questions or concerns at any point. And we take those calls with the idea of taking this burden off of staff, administration and staff. And we do have a pretty robust ability to stay in touch with those vendors and make sure that all are contacted throughout the process. We do also have vendors that at times will accept card payments that over time they may choose not to, or vice versa. We may have suppliers that do not accept payments, and over time they do start to accept. Those adjustments are made along the way. But it should be mentioned, though, that not all suppliers will be enrolled in the program. Not everybody accepts a card payment. Some suppliers limit the size of the transactions, as you can imagine, and that will sometimes be a limiting factor. So we can set limit approvals based on whatever that supplier is willing to accept. The other aspect is the county may have pre-negotiated discounts as well, based on either terms or some other discount negotiation that we want to make sure and respect that too. So if it's not in the county's best interest, we're not going to enroll suppliers on the program. On page 4, is a quick overview of where we're at, which is we've discussed both the purchasing card and the AP or virtual card program with administration and staff. The staff is in agreement to move forward with the contract for the purchasing card program. That is not really a change of any nature, any significance to the program. That is just getting updated pricing for the current contract that's been in place. And that simple switch will increase the revenue share back to the county just on the purchasing card volume to about $2,800 based on our estimates versus just under $1,000 today. It also removes some minimums that were required in order for the county to qualify. The AP or virtual card side of the program is still in process. We're still going down that route of exploring that. As of current, it doesn't look like there's any obstacles to better utilize that program. And these programs are on the same contract. So whether the county uses it or not down the road, we want to go ahead and get them the ability to do that. So the contract includes both sides and pricing for that, or revenue share, I should say, for that. Based on a recent analysis of the county suppliers in annual spend, we're estimated that the revenue share could be about $26,000 annually by utilizing the program to its potential. So as far as the contract that is in front of you guys, there's no cost to that contract to have it. It's a month-to-month contract. There's no end term. We intend to do reviews periodically, whether that be annually or semi-annually or biannually. And that would be at the willingness of the team to want to review the program and see if there's any pain points or challenges or areas that we can help to improve the program as well. As new contracts do become available, if it's in the best interest of the county, we would recommend that at that time. And then pages 5 and 6 is just the updated pricing. Page 5 has the virtual AP card program, and it has updated revenue share payouts there based on volume. It's a volume-based business. The higher the volume, the better the revenue share. And then page 6 includes the purchasing card program, the prior performance and prior model versus the current, and the new estimated revenue share there. And by revenue share, just to make sure everybody's clear, what we're using is we're basically sharing the small portion that Commerce Bank receives, the discount price. You have, in credit card processing, you have the network cost, your Visa, MasterCard, Discover. You have their interchange costs. You have the originating bank and the receiving bank portions as well that are included in the overall cost. And we are basically sharing back through these programs to the users some of that revenue. The other aspect that is probably under discussed is just the amount of fraud mitigation that the programs also bring. With the program being a Visa program that we use, Visa does offer zero liability through purchases that are made through the program, and so any fraudulent or any unauthorized activity would not be the responsibility of the county. When we do send payments to suppliers, they are tokenized one-time use card numbers. So there's limited amount of fraud opportunity on the AP virtual side. The individual cards, just like a consumer card, if you go to a gas pump or use it for a purchase, you kind of have to maintain the similar due diligence as you do with a personal card. But again, it carries a zero liability fraud mitigation tool as well. So open it up for any questions that you may have and or comments from the team.
Do you work with a number of other large institutions like counties and do this?
Yeah, through the hundreds of different organizations that we have the program with, it really covers the gamut as far as organization styles, for-profit corporations to municipalities to school districts and things like that. We actually we have a couple references for the county as far as another county that was recently onboarded and can share their experience on how the onboarding process went. And then we also have a local company that's been a longtime user that's willing to be a reference for the county as well.
Okay. Have you come up with any fraud or found any fraud throughout using this program?
It goes back to individual users. More often than not, the biggest issue we have is actually with gas pump skimmers. And so it's just due diligence and knowledge of the individual card holders on the purchasing card side to make sure they know what to look for. But the same thing, same rules apply largely with personal cards as well.
Okay.
On the AP or virtual side, there really hasn't been any issues on that side, and the components that are built into the program to mitigate and eliminate that fraud, they work pretty well. The biggest thing is educating the suppliers, because they get that payment remittance by email, and making sure we get that to the right person. And we're all trained to not click on links. There is a link in there, so it's a little bit of educating and making sure they know exactly what that remittance request looks like. And so that's what our enrollers do work through. That's a large component of educating the suppliers if they're not part of the program already, so that they know what to expect.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're just, I guess, renewing or updating the contract. We're not reissuing all new cards or rechanging how we process anything really currently.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is an ongoing, I guess I guess it's probably not the right word, an at-will contract. It's not a 10-year or 5-year. It's,
Correct. It's month to month.
so if there's something else that comes out better or something, you'll present that as a
Yep.
renew to the contract. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very competitive marketplace amongst card issuers, and so it does require us from time to time to update our contracts. And the county hasn't been a big user, from a volume standpoint, has not been one of the heavier users. In past years, attempts to get in and review the program, there hasn't been a big willingness to expand it or review it at the time. But we wanted to step in and make sure that the county knew what tools it had available as its hands, and make sure that if it makes sense for the county to use, we want to make sure they've got the best contract available.
Well, I'd say, Shane, you're a county taxpayer, so saving the county tax dollars on cost savings from stuffing and printing envelopes and then
Yep.
working with the county to get revenue back, that's a pretty good deal for the taxpayer, I think. So
Yep.
thanks to you and to Bobby and Vern out there for putting in the work and effort. You guys did the heavy lifting. I think to me, it makes an easy decision. You explained it well, and again, if it's better for the county and the taxpayer, I think that's a decision well made. So thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate it. So I don't have a problem going forward with it. So
Very good.
Well, I'll move to approve the attached agreement with Commerce Bank for the purchasing card program and have the county administrator sign the contract documents.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next are Grant. Justin?
Good morning, Commissioners. It's
Good morning.
Justin Craig, Environmental Services Director. Let's see. On February 7th, KDHE visited the Ellis County landfill for their annual inspection. It was brought to our attention that our current can crusher that we use to crush and dispose of aerosol cans was not up to code. So we were advised to apply for a grant through KDHE to purchase the proper equipment to dispose of those cans. And I just wanted to update the commission on that. If you had any questions or anything, we're currently just waiting the signed contract and the funds, and we'll get that ordered and put it into place.
Does it look like a pretty good shot that you're gonna get the grant?
Yeah, we've been awarded the grant. I've signed the contract. We're
Okay.
just waiting for them to sign it, and they'll send us 50% of the funds to order it and then reimburse us the rest when it's
Okay.
received.
Where do the aerosol cans come from? Are these cans that we're collecting in the county that we use in our departments, or are they from?
It's from the citizens of Ellis County, and then we have a 14-county HHW program that they can bring their cans to us. So if anybody, if a painter has a bunch of cans, or if you have spray paint at home, you don't want to throw it in the trash, you can bring it out to the landfill for free, and we'll dispose of it properly.
Okay. Thank you.
Guess no motion on that, is there?
No, it was just for
Okay.
update you guys on the
Okay,
process.
thank you. Okay. The next you have the joint planning commission appointments.
All right, Justin Craig, Environmental Services Director. Since December, we have been short one member on our Planning and Zoning Committee due to a resignation. We waited until April. We had one applicant for that. Mr. Ross Meter would like to apply, submitted a citizen's interest form to apply for the Joint Planning Commission, so brought that to you guys today for your decision on that.
I don't have any worries, so I move to appoint Ross Meter to the Joint Planning Commission to serve the remainder of the vacated term effective immediately and expired June 30th, 2024.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, welcome into the Planning Commission.
Will do.
Okay. Next, we have a request for RPM Speedway, request for waiver of fees at the Ellis County landfill? Or did I miss one from you, Justin?
Yep, that's it.
That's it? Okay, you're here.
Still
Okay.
here. Yep, still me.
Okay.
All right, Justin Craig, Environmental
Oh,
Services
there it is.
Director.
Got it.
Gotcha. So, we were approached by members of RPM Speedway. Over the years, they have accumulated a mass of tires. They were estimating approximately 200 tires at the racetrack and I believe 3 boats that they use for some type of race where they pulled them behind. I'm not sure on that. They came to us requesting to see if we would ask the commission to approve the disposal of those tires for free or at a reduced charge.
So you've been in contact with the Speedway on how to bring that stuff out and,
Yes, they're going to be trying to clean them up as best they can to get any dirt that might have accumulated in them, but they're going to be transporting them to the landfill if it's approved.
okay. Well, it's county property, so I have a feeling we're gonna deal with this one way or another, so I don't have a problem allowing them to come out and bring those out if they're willing to bring them up and work with you on it.
Yeah, this makes sense to just get it cleaned up. I've driven by it before, never really thought about it, but you kind of see it out of the corner of your eye, and you're like, man, it looks like trash. So I think getting it cleaned up is a worthwhile deal here, so.
Yeah.
I move to approve the one-time waiver reduction of fees. How many? It says XX ton, what do I say?
Yeah, well, currently, we charge $270 a ton to dispose of tires at the landfill. It cost us about $250 a ton to dispose of them through our vendor. So it could be 200 tires, if we estimate 40 pounds of tire, it could be 4 to 5 tons. It's basically the cost, the county $1,000 roughly, plus or minus.
Okay.
Okay, well, reduction of fees of
So it'd be-
dependent tonnage at the Ellis County landfill for the disposal of used tires and boats that have accumulated at the Ellis County Fairgrounds.
I'll second that. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Justin, while I got you up there and we're talking about tires, are there grants coming out that have been done in the past for tire collections and stuff like that?
The only one that I'm aware of right now is the Orphan Tire Grant, where if, say, Road and Bridge finds a tire like that, or, someone moves out of a place and there's leftover tires, they can bring those to us, and we can apply to the state to be reimbursed for those. In the past, I believe there was a company that would take tires for free, but they have since stopped taking that, so it's
Okay.
something we've looked into. It's just, we haven't been able to find anything to dispose of them for free.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, we're moving on to cold mix requests for proposals.
Morning, Commissioners. Brendan McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director.
Morning.
So before you is our, sorry, thought that phone was on silent. Busy day today.
Uh-huh.
I do push-ups.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have reached out to about 5 vendors that make our cold mix in the past few years. We received responses back from 2 of them, Hefton Sons and APAC here in Hayes, to mix up our cold mix for our asphalt sealing season. So the process goes, we look at roads that we need treatment for, and we look at our budgeting numbers for it. For if we do an overlay, it's roughly 800 to 1,000 tons per mile, depending upon how much it's raveled or rutted. It might be close to that 1,000 tons per mile of that cold mix. So like if we used 5,000 tons of cold mix, it'd be roughly 6 miles of pavement that could have a 1-inch leveling course on it. But you have to seal over the top of that as well to protect that surface. So mixing up 5,000 tons, it's roughly $370,000 with current market pricing. And then you're another $140,000 to seal over that. So we all weigh all that out, because that would only treat 6 miles of our 160 hard surface miles of roads. We need to do more than that, so we try to balance what we do with our scrub seals and chip seals and fog seals with what we can overlay to improve the ride or improve the pavement. So before his request to allow us to come to an agreement with Heft and Sons to make up our cold mix that we're still working on the numbers on, make sure that we make enough that we make progress on our asphalt roads, but the rest of the roads don't just keep falling further and further behind on treatments. So it's a balancing act between the two.
When would this be done kind of upon request, like you would get your materials and say,
They would
okay,
start May 1st and have it all made by May 31st to start our seal season.
Okay,
So we already have the chips and the screenings for our mix on the ground. So if you look through the proposal, there's option 1 and option 2. Option 1 has sand, screenings, and half-inch chip material. Option 2, which we prefer not to use because it does not last as long, is just sand and screenings. Option 1 is the better option for us to go with. That's what we like to do. Just the availability of those chips is becoming an issue out here. We're looking into options about bringing material up from Oklahoma that we can find correct size stone here in western Kansas. The problem is it's not the correct hardness to be used. It's just too soft. It'll, like our rock roads, how they get that smooth white coat on them. I don't want to put that in an asphalt mix because the road will just collapse underneath itself. So the closest quarry that sells half-inch chip is Quartzsite, which is 91 or so miles away from here. They've already told us we're not on the books for this year. They've got too many other projects they need the chips for, so we have some on the ground now, and we're looking at all options out there to try and procure more of these half-inch chips, whether rallying them in from eastern side of the state or getting a backhaul from a truck coming back from Oklahoma area. Just, we had harder rock out here in western Kansas, we'd be good, but don't quite have that stuff.
right. Okay.
I
Any
don't have
questions?
any real questions, So, I'll move to allow the Public Works Director to accept the proposal from Heft and Sons for production of cold mix asphalt.
I'll second that. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, so you can
Thank you very much.
get it taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Purple Wave auction items. Darren?
Good morning again, Darren Myers, County Administrator. Before you this morning on this agenda item is a discussion to allow county staff to present to you a list of equipment that we're asking for permission to sell on the Purple Wave auction site. And before I forget, one question that Commissioner Liker did ask me yesterday was the grader out at the Environmental Services. And one of the reasons, two-part reason, but we would ask that we did add that grader. With the Public Works Department that did receive their 2 new graders, they were going to transfer one to solid waste, and they end up using a part off of that to fix another, and they're waiting on that part to come in so that way they could transfer that grader. But we do feel by the time the grader would actually go up for sale, it'll take a couple weeks to get an auction going, and then they stay on site for about a month, or online for about a month. So by then we should have that grader fixed and over to solid waste. So we would be able to add that grader to the list. But basically the majority of the items that are on the list are vehicles that have been replaced from the Enterprise Fleet Management Program. And as we get those new vehicles in to replace the aging fleet, all of our current vehicles that are owned by the county, we're selling locally through Purple Wave, so that way we just handle them ourselves. And the sale of used vehicles currently on the used market have been fairly high. So as we continue to move forward with the Enterprise Fleet Program through the years, and we have more vehicles on the fleet side and not necessarily county owned, this list will get smaller because as we rotate those fleet vehicles out, Enterprise actually comes, picks them up, hauls them off, and takes them to a national auction to sell. All of our current fleet are the ones that go on here. Not all of the items that are on here, except for just a couple, are a part of that fleet program. For example, there's a ATV out at Noxious Weed, a tire machine that's been replaced. So there's some other equipment that are on here as well. But basically, this equipment will come back, once it's sold, the revenues will come back to the county to help offset the enterprise fleet management program. The expenses that we have for the new leased vehicles, this kind of offsets those expenses for those leases. And it'll all be deposited into the general fund, into Department 97, which is basically a line item adjustment for the, like I say, the enterprise program. So it just comes in as unrecognized revenue.
Okay. The sign truck that's on here, it has question marks on whether or not it's for sale.
Yes, so the question mark that I had Carissa add on there is because if you remember 2 months ago was when that purchase was approved for the new sign truck.
Mm-hmm.
The delivery date was supposed to be in May, or is expected to be in May. So what that's signifying is that we'll still list it for sale, but we may just have a available date on it, that if the auction ends June 1st, we might say it's not available till June 14th for pickup. So that way the Public Works maintains access to the vehicle until it can be turned over when the new truck gets here. So that way we have a signed truck in service at all times.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, no questions from me.
Sounds good.
We will get those listed and contacted with Purple Wave.
Okay. Then Darren, the budget process.
So I will apologize up front. There's not a lot of this we'll be able to see. I'll put it up on the screen. However, since we don't have about a 120-inch television, it's kind of hard to go through the whole entire spreadsheet together. But I'll visit with you about where we're at today compared to what expenses are for the previous years, as well as how this budget year impacts us. And then we'll look at a 10-year forecast, and I'll share it all up on the screen once we get to the spreadsheets on how we can make some different changes so you can see some ideas that you may want to consider on how it would impact our financial forecast over the next few years. And as I mentioned to both of you yesterday, we can make assumptions, but nobody in this room or in the world can know exactly what the market's going to do, what salaries are going to do, what health insurance is going to do, what valuations are going to do over the next 10 years. So these, like I say, are just assumptions, but it kind of gives you an idea of a change that you could make, how it impacts the county in the future years. So kind of just to get started, when you look at the 22 budget overall, we collected just over 4.5% extra in revenues, which was about just over $1 million. Those are several reasons. It's not property taxes, but valuations change. So, but you have revenues from EMS, health, grants, throughout all the departments. That collectively is where that $1 million comes from. More importantly, though, not just the revenues. You always want to collect your revenues, of course, so that way you can maintain your budget, but also your expenditures. And our expenditures, as of the end of the year, just a few days ago, we were $1.3 million under budget, which was just over 5%. So kudos to the staff, the department heads, elected officials, to make sure we maintain collectively the general fund under budget. And that was by $1.3 million. A process that neither of you have seen this year unless you paid attention to the December meetings. Each year at the November, per policy, we do estimates. We present it to the commission that if a department is, say, $10,000 under budget at the end of the year and they have $10,000 of budget authority remaining, 50% of that can be transferred to their capital reserve accounts. Just last week, I made those transfers because basically the budget year for last year is completely closed, nothing being charged back or anything. So even though we were $1.3 million, what it shows right now under budget, I did make that transfer of just over $377,000 to reserves. So essentially, we were still about $950,000 under budget last year. Moving on then, if you look at our reserve funds, we have several more than what's actually listed, but these are the several that are the most common. One is Fund 6, which is our capital improvement fund. That's the fund that we make building improvements from the HVAC equipment, roofs, lawns, parking lot replacements, toilets, not necessarily toilets, but the building, the infrastructure throughout the county. We did transfer $1.4 million there, and that number continues to be more than the yearly average, essentially because that's the money that we're setting aside in addition to what we normally set aside to pay for the Public Works building once or if approved this summer. So in the future years, that number will significantly drop back to a number that accumulates what the projected expenses are over the next 5 to 6 years, which is usually around $250,000, $300,000 a year that's transferred. Fund 16 has to deal with the equipment replacement fund, and that's purchasing equipment. So for Public Works, mowers, different, equipment, but also for other departments, vehicles, not necessarily that are part of the enterprise fleet program, but say, for instance, the sign truck. The sign truck itself, the chassis, is paid from the enterprise management fund, but the Fund 16 equipment reserve fund pays for the upfitting for the bed, the crane, the hoist, hydraulics, etc. Same thing for a sheriff's vehicle. The enterprise program is part of the vehicle, but all the upfitting to put the cage, the gun racks, the sirens, the lights, that all comes out of this fund. And that was, I had a transfer of just under $700,000 last year. The big amount, which is also a little outside normal, was Fund 78, and that's our Special Highway Road and Bridge Fund. And that's the fund that we set aside to make improvements to the county road system as well as the bridges. As you can see, that was right at $4 million last year. That number has significantly increased over the years. It's an easy number to remember, but basically 3 years ago, all we would be setting aside each year transferred was $329,000, which if you just looked at essentially one common bridge, that would take you 3 years of savings just to replace one bridge, and we need to be probably replacing, resurfacing multiple bridges a year. And that wouldn't even touch roads. So we have increased that set aside from $329,000 2 years ago to $800,000 last year, and now it's up to $1.6 million. So as that fund starts building a base, we're going to be able to allow more bids to go out from Public Works to do more road improvement and bridge improvement projects into the future. But the significant increase of why that's a $4 million transfer this year, not all of it was transferred, as the commission is aware, with the Northwest Business Corridor project. And then with traveling to DC last year and additional work from our Public Works Director, we end up getting it was about $2.8 million in additional federal funds for the build grant for that project that was reimbursed back to the county. So that's significant for that fund to be able to maintain an increased minimum balance, but also to start doing more projects into the future. Moving on, I guess a little bit of good news. Well, I guess it's all kind of been good news so far, but specific to the County Treasurer's Department, in the years past, as probably most everybody knows, the interest rates has been essentially nothing, next to nothing. A couple years ago, the total county revenues from investments of county funds was, I believe, below $30,000 a year. And all of last year, we were of the funds, since the county treasurer took over and did some switching on how he invests the funds, that went from $30,000 to just over $240,000 for the entire year last year. That's because of the change of where the funds are invested, but also the interest rates that have gotten better. The good news for this year is those interest rates continue to get better, and throughout just the first 3 months of this year, it's already collected $355,000. It was already 50% more than last year, but only a quarter of the way through the year. So Vern has done very well there, and he's estimated that to be about $1.3 million in tax revenues this year, which would be just over 3 mils of additional revenue that wouldn't be in the future if those rates and investments stay the same. It would be about 3 mils that would offset property taxes. So that's good news, and Vern and I have had discussions about where those numbers need to be next year for the amount of tax revenue that can be budgeted instead of where we're at this year. So that is great news to hear. Sales tax collections, briefly touch on that. There's a lot of numbers there. We have the two 1/4 cent sales tax, one for health, which is healthcare tax, which is primarily funds the health department and the EMS department. Between that fund and the other 1/4 cent, which is basically a general fund that can be used for almost anything, and also it is shared between the cities of Hayes, Ellis, Victoria, and Shinshin. Between the two funds, one is up year over year by 4.6%, and the other one is up by about 4.9%. 2021 was the first full year that the Ellis County recognized a full year of sales tax. So from 21 to 22, that's where we're seeing that roughly 4.6 to 4.9 increase in total sales tax collected. So when we start looking at the budget year next year, we have more history, so we don't have to be as conservative in the amount of sales tax that is collected and then transferred to offset property taxes into the general fund. When we first started, we were basing sales tax collections for the county portion based off the sales tax that we had from 2013 to 17, which paid for the EMS fire building and the courthouse renovations and the LEC renovation. Now that we have more years in advance, more years closer from 21 to 22, when we put together the 24 budget, like I say, we can more adequately estimate what those revenues are going to be for next year.
Maybe. That's where we don't know how 10 years is going to go. Are we estimating if we're not able to collect the sales tax on food, if the state passes their bill, or counties and cities can't collect that sales tax either?
Correct. That is that House
work
Bill
to- Yeah.
2002, was it, I believe? And when I bring up the spreadsheet, I can show you how the sales tax impacts our county budget from basically 2029 on, as if that 2029, we start losing it, 2030, it's completely gone. And then you'll see how our cash balances start progressively getting worse without those funds, based on other assumptions. But yes, I will bring that up here in just a minute. And then they're also with that House bill to eliminate the sales tax. So the original proposal for that, for those who may be listening, was that last year the state approved the removal of, they called it the tax, I believe, for sales tax on food. That was a 6.5% sales tax that's collected at the grocery store for food that's just goes to the state. It didn't impact what the cities and counties, local municipalities collected. So if we have our 1/4 cent sales tax, we would still collect that locally in Ellis County. It has then since been changed and amended this year, so that way the new proposal that's out there, and I think we were talking before the meeting that they may have a hearing on it today, that would eliminate all the sales tax altogether for cities, counties, school districts, everything on that, which would then impact us as a county government that's going to be taking the purpose of us asking for the sales tax. It's going to be taking that revenue away. To me, it's counterproductive for our state legislature when they say one thing about we want to do whatever we can to help lower property taxes, but then when a county passes a sales tax to help offset those property taxes, they then take away our sales tax as well, which then the only way to go back is, well, you're going to have a bigger impact on local property taxes. So that is important that doesn't get passed through the state, and we can retain that revenue. I'm sure the county commission is aware, both the city of Hayes, but Ellis County overall, it's also in the budget book. We have a pull factor that's significant to Ellis County and the city of Hayes, and I'm not just saying the city, but they're the largest city in the county. We do have that pull factor, which means a lot of people come in as a regional hub to Ellis County, spend money, stay, play, eat, shop, and more of the sales tax that we collect comes from those who visit Ellis County. They drive on our roads, they use our EMS systems, they get pulled over by our deputies occasionally. So if that pull factor means that the sales tax collected that offsets our county property taxes are those that are also coming into our county as well and offsetting or paying some of that sales tax. So that is important, that could have an impact on our finances into the future as well. Is groceries, it's a large part of the sales taxes that are collected, and the Kansas Association of Counties, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they do have a formula that's based on, I sent them information on how much sales tax revenue and everything we get, and they were able to collectively come throughout all the state on how much that would impact local county government. They did try to fix a way of that was by setting aside, I believe it was about $270 million that counties could then apply for to help offset that revenue loss. Then that was shot down as well. I think I shared an article with you about that the county clerk had shared with me, but that is no longer an option either. So if they take it away, then we essentially lose those funds.
Revenue. Okay.
Next fund to kind of identify of how well it's doing is our employee benefit fund. It has collected or has progressively gotten better over the years. We started out with the FCMI, which basically is a two-tiered insurance plan that is partially self-funded. So we have one plan that's with Blue Cross Blue Shield and a second tier that covers additional expenses as it's called a medical expense reimbursement program. And all those funds go into all the funds go into another fund that is then paid our insurance bills and those claims out of. And that has collectively gotten better over the years, and we're sitting about $1.1 million in reserves, which is over 200% funded at this point. However, if you look at a curve of how that fund is doing, initially it started curving up and it's kind of peaking. It's at the top of that bell curve essentially. Hopefully it doesn't come back down, but we're at a point where it's sustainable at the rates we are at. However, the commission is probably well aware that each year insurance rates go up, and it's based on several things, the factors of what healthcare around the world is doing around the state of Kansas, but also our local usage. In the last 2 years, the county commission has allowed us to help offset some of those increases by using that reserve fund. So we're basically setting even, and it's not going to grow as much as it has in the past because we've started to use some of those funds to help offset those expenses. So as we look into next year or later into this budget cycle for next year, that'll be a factor to consider, and we'll also look at that on the spreadsheet as well, on how those funds can, those health insurance premiums can impact our budget. So with that, I'm going to switch over to this spreadsheet, and everything we basically discussed is how it impacts the county's general fund, which is primarily all the departments in the county except for two, those two being the solid waste fund and the fire district. Last year, the fire district was about $1,500 under budget. We were only able to do that by reducing the transfer to their capital reserve fund because of all the expenses and the large fires that we had. December 21 really impacted all of 22 because of all the receipts, the expenditures, and everything moved over to 2022. The solid waste fund was over budget, as the commission sure is aware of. The rates had significantly increased based on our contract. As the price of fuel goes up, the price of transporting the solid waste from Hayes to Garden City went up. We did adjust our rates, and that is adjusted into this budget to accumulate or account for a higher expense to transfer all that waste down to Garden City. But like I say, this spreadsheet here is basically looking at our general fund. And just to go over a couple different things, if you look at the top, this is our unencumbered rollover cash balance. I know you can't see it all, but as we sit now with where we're at, there's several things that we can take into account. One is ad valorem tax. So when the commission starts to consider, well, we have the R&R rate that's out there, you can keep the R&R rate the same, which basically says the amount that we collect for ad valorem tax this year will be the same for next year. You're going to reduce your mill levy rate so that way the amount of tax, which is roughly $17 million that we're collecting this year, will be used for the next year's budget. That means next year, if we continue to do that, that $17 million in revenue that we get from taxes will stay the same. Now, what I want to caution the commission is if you were to, I'm not trying to suggest anything, I'm just trying to lay out scenarios. If you keep that the same, 17 million in revenue, what's going to happen with salaries? What's going to happen with insurance? Where have we been the last couple of years with inflation? Inflation's been 8%. So if we keep the revenues the same, but all of our expenses for contractual services, for commodities, for capital, all those go up, eventually you're going to lose your ground and you're going to start going negative. So if you look at our ad valorem tax, last year, as everybody's well aware, we had about a 13% increase in valuation, and the county appraiser has already given a presentation about a month ago where valuations are looking at next year, which are still about 10%. If you look at a 5-year historical trend over the last 5 years, not including what's coming up, but the last 5 years, there's a 3.7% annual increase is what they've increased each year. If you look over the last 75 years, it's 3.3%. So what I have in here is basically, like I say, you can't really see this, but our ad valorem tax, using that trend at 3%, keeps us on a trajectory, at least until the sales tax ends, that, like I say, if I wish we had a big screen that we could share this on, but our unencumbered rollover cash continues to increase until 2030, which is the year that the sales tax goes away. And then it progressively starts getting worse. So just by keeping the increase at a 3%, which is a 75-year trend, which we know is going to increase in the next year. However, it's probably going to start lowering with the rate of housing that is available, as well as the interest rates that are out there on home loans. That number is going to start lowering down and level back off. But this kind of shows you that just by that 3% increase year to year, even after the sales tax is collected, that's not enough if the sales tax isn't continued. However, if you just throw out the scenario that we're going to maintain a revenue neutral rate every year for the next 10 years, I'll just put 0 in there because that means we're going to stay revenue neutral. As you can see, by 2030, we're $11 million in the hole starting the year, which is essentially about 40% of our budget. So there's no way that staying revenue neutral based on assumptions that the sales tax would be 3% each year, we give minimal raises to employees each year, and increase in commodities and capital only increase 1 to 2% a year, that after about 10 years, we're negative $11 million starting off the beginning of a budget year. And as you can see, the sales tax kind of keeps us progressively getting better each year until about 2027, which is before the sales tax goes away. But eventually, those increased employee costs, increased costs associated with contractual services and everything else, even before the sales tax goes away in 27, come 2028, we start going on the negative trend again. That's with keeping that basically collecting no more than what we have as of this year for property taxes. I'm not saying that that's, like I say, I'm not making a suggestion, but I'm just saying if you try to keep that thought process of staying at the revenue neutral rate, it significantly hampers the abilities that the county will do. And I would then change our direction and discussion with staff about what are we going to change so we can prepare for that, because we're going to have to start cutting services, cutting employees, and significantly start cutting costs. That would probably mean more employees paying more for their health insurance, not getting raises, not increasing but decreasing budgets, and then also puts more of a focus on the sales tax coming up. So
Re-explain the sales tax, because it has an automatic sunset, correct? So
Correct.
it would have to go to a vote for.
Correct.
And it would have to be Because right now, half of it goes to EMS and half goes to general fund, but if it went to a vote, it would have to be, I guess, redone in some other fashion too, correct?
So correct, the two 1/4 cent sales tax that we have, one is for healthcare specific, which we collect 100% of that and kept and retained within the county. The other 1/4 cent is the general, which we as a county only collect about 41% of that. The other 49 or 59% goes to the Hayes, Ellis, Victoria, and Shinshin. In 2030, April 2030, I believe the first quarter, I'll forget the dates exactly, but in that time frame, that would go away completely because it would sunset. So at that point in advance, I would say in a year, we start doing marketing and with the commission at that time as to what type of sales tax the commissioner would want to see after that. We can completely let it go. We can re-ask the voters to maintain what it is. You can switch it all to the healthcare side of it, so that way the county would retain more of it. However, that would then negatively impact Hayes, Ellis, Victoria, and Shinshin from their funds. Or you can change it completely. There are statutes that are available, that are out there that dictate what we sell it for to the public to vote on is how we can use it. So like the healthcare, EMS, the county is specific, and the health department is county specific. That's why we get to retain those funds. The 1/4 cent general tax can be used for anything, which we opted at that point to pay a bond payment with for roads and bridges. And that was the big purpose of the Northwest Business Corridor, as well as several other projects that were identified. Since that is something that a city can also do, and they do on their own, that is why it's a revenue, it's shared. So that'll be a determination from if the current commission is still on at that point, or the future commission is about how they want to market it and ask the voters to vote on for. So moving on, if I say, like I say, the sales tax, if you look, these blue lines that are down here on the bottom, that's when the sales tax goes away, which impacts that above fund. As I said, the unencumbered rollover balance starts going away. I mentioned to you earlier, our sales tax revenue increase from 21 to 22 changed. We had an increase of 4.6 to 4.9%. However, is that going to stay at 4% increase over the coming years? Most likely not. I was going to reach out to the finance director for the city of Hayes because they have decades of history on sales tax collections just for the city, but I believe their year-over-year rate is more down around the 1 to 2% increase. I don't know if Mr. Burgess remembers that or not, but I don't think we can plan on 4.5 to 5% annual growth in sales tax. These last couple of years have been good, partially probably because of inflation, the stimulus money that's been out there, the ARPA funds. People are spending more, and they also had stimulus checks too. So that, well, as soon as those factors go away, I think those numbers would go back down. So these assumptions that I have here with a 3% growth in ad valorem tax, but I also just have that as 3% growth for sales tax over those coming years. But if you change the sales tax down to just 2%, you can see that takes several $100,000 of revenue away that starts over each year, and it does impact the future. But as of 2030, those do go away. One thing that I do want to mention to the commission, if you look mainly just at the colors, based on the assumptions that I have put on here, that's a 3% growth in sales tax, 3% growth in sales tax, 3% growth in property tax over the years. And a 3% growth in property tax would still lower the mill levy down because that's less than what the revenue neutral rate would actually be when valuations are as high as they've been. But if you look at that red line down at the bottom, like I say, once again, you can't read the readings, the numbers in there, but our budget policy states that it's in the county's best interest that if we have a certain amount of our budget, so if you say our budget's $10 million, our budget policy states that we want to have 25% of that rolled over every year. So $10 million would be 2.5 million. Our budget for this year is right at 29 million. So as you can put that number together, that's about a $7 million, $7 million rollover is what we want. Due to the sales tax, due to trying to keep the budgets from increasing, adding staff, all those different things, that 25% number at the end of this year, we're projected to be 5.5 million away from reaching that budget margin. Now, by keeping us above the revenue neutral rate and keeping costs down, each year we get about $1 million closer to getting to that goal, but not until 2029 do we actually meet that goal. So as you can't, like I say, see, as we progress from now through 2029, 2029 is the first year where we're actually meeting a 25% unencumbered cash balance rollover from year to year. And that goes until 2030 when we have just about $1 million. What happens at that point, if we did have that $1 million, budget policy states that we didn't take that excess money and the commission then decides if that $1 million in 2030, it then automatically gets transferred over to capital reserves. So that way you would have additional funds to put towards roads and bridges. However, until then, no additional funds are put into reserve. And 25%, like I say, is about $7.5 million at that year. But as you can see, that's only a 2-year margin. Once 2031 comes around and the sales tax doesn't get voted on again and reallocated right away within that next year, we're already starting dipping into how much unencumbered cash we have at the beginning of the year. And we go from $1 million in 2030 to negative 350, negative 1.7, negative 3.1 million come 2033. And if that unencumbered balance is only $8 million, eventually, a few years after that, as it progressively gets worse, the county would not be funded for operations without making significant cuts again. So a lot of what I want the commissioners to think about is how that sales tax is going to impact us in the future, the revenue neutral rate, and how much of a budget increase or budget changes you would like to see next year, where we're at, and how that not only just impacts us not just next year but into the future. And I could run a lot more scenarios on here that we could change. This only assumes a 3% cost of living or 3% fund for employee salary increases. As the commission is well aware, the market is very more employee demanded at this point, which means the employees, not just in Ellis County, they have the upper hand on their employers as to they're moving from job to job because jobs are offering. There's some counties in the eastern part of the state giving 20 to 30% pay increases, better benefits, different insurances, different types of incentives to leave their current employer. So is 3% enough? I'm not going to weigh in on that, but the last couple years I would say no. And what the future is going to be is 3% valid. And these numbers also, as we can see here, is a 5% annual increase year over year for health insurance. And that's probably on the light side as well. So if we were to change even those by 1%, that bottom line of where we would meet our threshold of a budget reserve account of 25%, we never reach it in the next 10 years. And that still doesn't take into account what type of budget adjustments we have for commodities and contractual expenses in the county. And they're currently only set at 2%. The commission is well aware of what inflation has done over the years. It's been 8-9%. So sustaining where we're at is not possible without changing the revenue sources. So with that, I don't want to bore you too much. I know Commissioner Leiker has a 3-hour trip ahead of him, but the next steps in the budget process, I guess, with this kickoff discussion is the attached budget calendar is kind of where we'll put the dates down tentative for where we're at to put together the 24 budget. But next week specific, and I visited with Commissioner Younger, we'll have a meeting this weekend to go over these financials as well. Is next week's meeting will be asking the commission what kind of budget direction you want to see done from the department heads and elected officials. If you want more focus here or reductions there. And we also ask for outside agencies, because those are about $1.1 to $1.2 million of our budget. Where would you ask them to come at? Do you want them to cut, stay the same, increase? Like I say, any specifics. So that way, after that, I can formulate the budget spreadsheets. The county staff can meet, and they can start working in the next month or so to put together their initial budget draft to be presented to the commission on June 6th. That would be the first time you will see the initial draft of the budget. So I'm silent now, and if you have any questions or anything else you would like to see or hear of.
I guess at this time I don't. We'll come up with some ideas to propose to the executive team here for next week.
Yeah, I guess for executive team, do you have kind of a worksheet to look off of, or am I just gonna go off the top of my head and try to remember which departments to kind of think about, or do you have something to kind of work off of?
As in, like, what their current budgets are?
Yeah, or,
You could use, so, I'll hold it up. For one thing, you can use your budget book. It has last year's actuals, this year's budget. When we actually start getting into the budget process, and I have that first draft given to you as the department heads, I'll give you a book that looks similar to this, which will break down every department. And then they'll have all their individual budgets. So that way you can start making notes as their first budget is presented to you. And it'll also be several prior years' history with that as well. And then that'll eventually, the process is you'll get all that as one document or one book. You'll be able to make your notes and review it, give us feedback. And then after you give us the feedback is when we have a day meeting, essentially, where we'll schedule each department head to come in with you 15, 20 minutes and go over just their department specific and make changes, ask questions, or do things differently before they revise it the second time, which is not the final, but that's kind of the 95% plans review piece where it's pretty much set where you want, and we start inputting stuff into the state documents so we can see exactly where we're at with the tax rates, because the taxes at this point, the county appraiser is doing all their appraisals, and I believe by June 1st, they have to get it to Bobby, so that way she can start doing all of her revenue neutral rate calculations, which is one of her favorite times of year.
I can't wait.
So after that June date, she will populate that, which is kind of correlates to when you first getting your first reviews. So after that, we can start putting it into the state documents to kind of narrow it down and get it closer to that second round of budget numbers.
Okay.
Is that, does the commission feel that's okay, having that kind of a process go, having a budget book? And
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
or if you feel like you need more history beforehand, I can run,
I'm gonna need
I
a
have
secretary
spreadsheets
to
that
help me
has,
out.
what's that?
I'm gonna need a secretary to help me out.
And I can provide more history if you want over the years, but it's usually the last two this year and then what the next year is projected to be, or what the departments are looking for is the main thing.
Okay. Oh, sure. If I got questions, I'll just reach out to anybody.
Yep.
So, okay. All right. Well, that all looks good there for dates coming up, and we'll get it all kicked off next week, I guess. So, county administrator report, Darren. Do you have anything?
Sorry, I do. Two quick things. First, I did want to mention that I've spoken to some members out at the fairgrounds in regards to the facility out there. I do want to give kudos to Tom and Melinda Frost. They kind of help manage the fairgrounds. But starting to work with them and the Fair Board on issues out at the fairgrounds themselves. Some good news coming out there is hopefully by the end of this month, well, last year, the commission approved spending funds, I believe it was last year, escaping me now, but anyway, the Shank and the Unrein building is getting repainted, so that way it's more attractable to, and not having 4 or 5 different colors on the outside of that. But it may come to a point in the future where the Fair Board and comes to the commission to start looking at ideas on how we can make some improvements out to the fairgrounds. The parking lot is becoming in somewhat disrepair. They're having a lot of trips and falls out there because of the, wouldn't really even call it pavement, pavement / potholes and rocks, you know, so some issues there, and maybe we're doing some redesigning of some fences out there and an entrance specific to the RPM Speedway and rodeo grounds, so that way it can be separated when there's events out there that are taking on at the Shank and Unrein building. As last weekend we had the opening races, or we didn't, the RPM Speedway had their opening races, but then both the Shank and Unrein buildings were rented out, and there was over 600 to 700 people there. One side was for Fort Hayes, and the other side had a wedding, and that parking lot and the way it's all designed, you can't really do both at the same time without having conflicts. So they may come back with some ideas of how we can start maintaining that property better out there and doing some changes. So I wanted to make the commissioners aware of that. But also our Fair Board and Tom and Melinda do a great job in maintaining and doing what they can with that property out of the fairgrounds. And the other thing is, as the commissioner is aware, but we did release a press release yesterday morning that we did put the burn ban in place for all of the unincorporated areas of Ellis County due to the increasing spring temperatures, the lack of moisture, and occasionally low humidity levels. But especially today with the high winds in place, don't have any significant moisture coming in the future. So we do have a burn ban out there in place today. I want to make sure everybody is aware of that and just make sure they're extra precautious. Don't throw your cigarettes out the window when you're dragging or when you're pulling equipment. Make sure nothing's dragging on the ground. Your safety chains are up off the ground as well. And it happens quite a bit, but landowners, farmers, business people, they fix fence, they work on equipment, they do welding. Make sure that they wet their grounds down quite a bit, because we do have a lot of fires started from arcing and welding and grinding out in the county. So it's going to be significant fire weather today with 70+ mile-an-hour winds. So hopefully our fire department is not busy, which means I'll be busy. So that's all I got.
Okay. Commissioner report?
I don't have anything.
I don't either at this time, so. Okay, no executive sessions today, so with that, we'll move for adjournment at 9:58. Thank you, everybody.